The method I describe in the plans and the kit is basically assuming you're using a drill press. I'm going to go through that method first, and then I'll show you how I would do it if I was going to drill it by hand. So the first thing you do is get the leg clamped in place. So once we've got our clamp on and we've made sure that it's not blocking these two holes, we can transfer the location of the hole to the inside face of that leg. And I'm using a punch that's just one size down from the 3/8 diameter of the hole. We'll pull that clamp off, and we've got two little dimples, one here and one here, that mark the exit points of those two holes. So what we're going to do is square those around to the other side, go to the drill press, and drill the counterbores first. So we've got our vertical location. Now we need to do our horizontal location. So for that, I basically turn my combination square into a marking gauge. Make sure we measure off the same side. And they are not exactly the same. We can now use the awl and deepen those holes to get an easier start. Okay, now we need to go over to the drill press. So what I'm going to do now is basically ream the hole all the way through, make sure it'll line everything up. You could do this with a cordless drill. The best thing I've found to silence a drill bit is beeswax. Okay. Great. All right, I'll unclamp it, I'll flip it over, and I'll show you how to do the whole process completely by hand. This is how I would drill the holes and the counterbores in the rear legs if I was doing it purely by hand. And I think the only bit that I would, well, one of the few bits that I would recommend you buy if you don't have it already is either a 3/8 long installer bit like this. This one I've custom ground to have a really sharp point, or the longer version of this Wood Owl bit. This is the short one, and I kind of wish that I bought the longer one when I bought it, because I could use it for this step and I wouldn't have to drive the bit into the opening. So basically you just use the holes that you drilled in the previous step as a guide to finish drilling through the leg. But you don't go all the way through. You want to stop just short of going all the way through so that you can use the point of that bit to guide a bigger bit as a counterbore. And since this doesn't have the lead screw and the long flutes, it's going to take a few turns in and out. Just want to be careful not to blow through the bottom. And too late, I did. Well, you can see I went all the way through on one of these, and I stopped right where I wanted to on the other. So we'll just figure out a way to get this hole drilled, the counterbore drilled, without tearing this face up too bad. Because we're drilling it by hand, we have a little bit more control than if we were to take this over to the drill press with a Forstner bit and just try to plunge it right in there without any way to guide the bit. So I'll get this rail out of the way, and then we'll get to work drilling these two counterbores. I've got my this is another Wood Owl auger bit. I've got a tape depth stop marked close to 3/8 deep, which is the depth I want, and I'm going to start with the easier of the two holes. And this little point here that came through is a perfect starting point for the lead screw on this auger bit. It should just bite right in. Now at some point you'll get to the hole that's drilled from the other side, and the screw won't do you any good except to keep the bit centered. It won't pull itself through anymore, so you have to put a little more pressure on it. Let's check our depth. Too shallow. Just about there. Okay, that one's good. Now we'll move the clamp over. Got a little too excited and punched the drill bit through. So now I've got to very carefully try to scribe a circle with this bit. And I can do it in reverse if I'm careful, or I can do it this is where having 3 spurs is pretty handy with these bits. Okay, so let's see if I can. Just very lightly pressing down and taking as shallow as cut as I can. Okay, not an awful save. I did save it a bit. I usually chamfer the edges of these holes anyway, so I'll just have to make the chamfers a little bit bigger than normal to cover up some of these little bit marks. One of the things I do before I ship my shave horses out to my customers is I chamfer all the edges. And this is as good a time as any to do it. For these straight edges, you can use just a block plane. But when you get into these curves, it's helpful to have, you know, something as simple as a dowel with some sandpaper wrapped around it. You can use a larger diameter block or dowel for these big sweeping curves. But in here, where we've got tear out from that drill bit, this is about, you know, you can't get in there with a bigger block. So I'll hit this and kind of shape it with this coarser sandpaper, and then just like any other sanding, you know, you'll work your way up through the grits until it looks nice and smooth. All right, let's get back to the building. First thing we got to do is put the legs on the shave horse. This one I'm going to leave short. Make it a little bit easier to put the other leg on. And these are 3/8 nuts, so they take a 9/16 socket head. We don't have to crank them down really tight. We're just trying to make sure it's going to go together. Before I can flip this thing over to mark the height of the legs, I need to make sure that these faces are flush. So what I'm going to do is clamp this thing to the bench. Grab a nice sharp block plane and plane it flush. Okay, that's good. And I'm being sure to plane into the rail, because if I go this way, I'll blow out this joint. I could also chamfer that edge first, and that would solve that problem. As soon as I see the grain start to lift up there, I know I'm pretty much where I need to be. Okay, that looks good. Flip this thing around and put the front leg on. Okay, we got a shave horse base. You can leave it. You can leave the back legs just like this. Right now, it's not quite sitting level. But what I like to do is, at the very least, I like to cut the legs off flush at the floor. So to do that, we need to flip it over and get a piece of scrap and a carpenter's pencil. The first thing we need to do to cut this down to height is find a block of wood that is the same length as the height of the front leg. And then we're going to use it to transfer that height onto the back legs. And the only thing that's really important about this block of wood is that the ends be parallel. And then we're going to take a pencil. This is basically just a lumber pencil that's been planed in half so that it makes a mark flush with the bottom edge. And this is something that I learned from one of Christopher Schwarz's, one of the Lost Art Press books, where he was, cutting things off flush with the floor. There's a couple other ways you can do this, but this way it's pretty simple as long as you have a piece of scrap that's the right length. So basically you want to get this block of wood as close to the part as you can without tipping it one way or the other, and then you just scribe a level line. Move it to the other side, do the same thing, and we're basically right at the cut line. We can move it over here, transfer it around. Getting a little close to the edge here. Okay, so that's one. All we have to do now is pull these legs off and cut to the line. You can put these parts into a bench hook and you can cut them that way. But I find that to be a little bit awkward because I'm cutting at a strange angle and I'm also having to lay it over. It's a compound angle. So for me, the easiest way to make these cuts is to actually stand them up closer to vertical in the leg vise and cut them that way. It's a pretty acute angle, so it's pretty important to grab a block plane and chamfer those edges now before they catch on something on the ground and split off. And don't be afraid to take a lot of material. Okay, there's one. All right, put it back together. All right. We have ourselves a base, and it's sitting nice and flat on the bench. So this is a pretty nice milestone. The next step we will tackle is the stage assembly.